Okay, Rachel, we're live. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. It's been a
Yeah.
long day.
Yes.
It gets late it gets dark at 5 o'clock, and I'm already in my
Right.
I should be getting ready for bed, but no, it's
Right.
only 5. So
Right.
yeah.
And it's 7 o'clock at night in the summer. It's like, woo, we got more time. Let's do stuff. And then the same
Exactly.
exact time in the winter, it's like, it's time to go to bed. Why are we still awake? I like the summer much better. I've decided I'm a plant. I need sun. I need water. I'm good.
I think all of us, I think most of us are
Right.
plants.
We're all plants. So.
Okay, so
Right.
for the benefit of the people that are already online, thank you for the people already online on time. Kudos to you guys. I think we'll start.
All righty.
Okay, then. So, good evening to everybody. My name is Mirit Hoffman. I'm an attorney. I have a private practice in Bet Shemesh. My main focus is estate planning, which is preparing wills, enduring power of attorneys, trusts, and also dealing with estate and tax issues with people who have dual citizenships, Israeli and U.S. And from my exposure with this, with the age group, which is mainly senior citizens, I've decided to host talk sessions with all kinds of professionals that also deal with senior citizens, with mainly senior citizens, to basically expose everybody to the possibilities, and also to these professionals and their abilities to help the people themselves and their families. And today we're going to talk to Rachel Weinstein, who is a clinical social worker and has been living in Israel for almost 10 years and is a very nice person, very fun to talk to.
Thank you.
So Rachel, come on, introduce yourself.
Alrighty, so my name is Rachel Weinstein. We made Aliyah, my family and I made Aliyah from Chicago about 10 years ago. I recently started a private practice, a private social work practice. I took a little break. I was a hospice social worker, and I worked with nursing home patients, hospital patients, clinical settings, medical settings, the works. One could say that I've been a social worker probably since birth, but professionally for about 25 years. And yeah, it's my professional true love. That's what I've returned to, and that's never really left me, but here we are. So yeah, so I focus not exclusively on people dealing with transitions and adjustments and grief, but there are so many things in life that kind of fall into those categories. Aliyah is a huge transition, and when you miss the country you came from, in my case it was the U.S., it's a grief process, and it's a bereavement process, because things are easier now. But I always, say that the first time walking into a grocery store and looking for milk and seeing that it was in a bag, that was a head trip, to say the very least. So that it seems silly and it seems so little, but it's a huge adjustment. It's like in the Wizard of Oz, we're not in Kansas anymore. When you realize you're really not in Kansas anymore, you need to adjust. So that's all sorts of adjustments, and helping people with anticipatory grief and what it's like to deal with the loss of independence, functioning in a different language. So those are my some of my areas.
Okay, and today we're going to talk about complicated relationships during complicated times.
Right.
And from our rehearsal that we did this morning, I remember you sort of wanted to start with a story, which was very interesting. So go ahead.
Right. So I think that for a lot of us, when we think about taking care of our parents, there's usually a very sort of sweet story. Mom and dad were always there, and I want to take care of them. But unfortunately, that's not the situation for everyone. And the story I want to open up with is when I was a hospice social worker in Illinois. We had a nursing home patient who was in a nursing home in Glenview, which is a fairly upscale kind of suburb. And there was a little old lady who couldn't take care of herself at all. And she had very few, if any, visitors. And because no one visited her, the nursing home staff felt like they needed to give her extra care, because they felt so bad. How could how could anyone have abandoned this woman in a nursing home? The hospice staff, which was an entire interdisciplinary team, kind of flocked to her also. She was alone. She was cute, right? I don't really like that word for an older person, but that kind of fit in that case. And we really wondered, where was the family? Why was this seemingly lovely lady who was clearly very ill, why did nobody take care of her? And we eventually got in touch with her family, and one of her daughters, spoke with us and gave us a little bit of history, which is standard to do. And she said, you're probably wondering why we don't show up, why we don't, visit. You probably think we're, that family. And of course you don't say, well, yeah, we do, but we did. We did think that. And so she said, I know that you guys are taking great care. We wanted to make sure she got enough care, the right care in a nursing home and hospice. We understand her life's coming to a close. But I just want to let you know the reason that we need to keep a distance is because Mom wasn't the woman you see today. She was really abusive. She used to call us horrible things. She used to tell us we weren't going to, she told us horrible things. She described horrible things to us. And at one point, Mom pushed me down a flight of stairs. And so they said the reason we don't visit is not because we don't want her to get the right care and the best care. We need to step back because we have to protect ourselves. It put a whole spin on the relationship. And it didn't matter what any of the staff thought. And in part, it kind of never does. It's about the family. But we went from thinking what a horrible family to I'm just grateful that they participate on any level because they could easily have washed their hands. So I think that it's just important that we not make any assumptions about others for sure and about ourselves.
Okay, so if there is a difficult relationship between the parent and the child, and the parent does need a caregiver, so what is the child supposed to do? What do you suggest?
I think doing everything preventatively is always the best way to go. Unfortunately, sometimes we don't have the luxury of time. But it's really important if Mom or Dad or anyone else that you might be asked to be responsible for, before they need help, make sure you know what are the expectations. If Mom gets ill, who steps in? What do we do? Right? And it's important if you can know that from your parents. Because if you have a complicated relationship with your parents, they know that too. So try to understand from them who do you want to be there when you can't do things on your own. If you have siblings, speak to your siblings. Also, you have to be honest with yourself. Let's say Mom or Dad who have not been so nice to you, or you've just had a conflictual relationship. Sometimes it's not abuse like in the first. In that story, it's just, you just never got along. You have to dig deep and make a decision. Can I do that? Am I going to be able to give over that part of myself to them if I'm going to be struggling all the time? And it's much better to be honest than to put yourself in a position that compromises what you're able to do and ultimately compromises their care. You may also need to discuss with your entire family, can we do this on our own? Can we keep Mom or Dad at home? Do we need to look at agencies? Do we need to look at an assisted living? Do we need to look at a nursing home? Do we need to look at caregivers? You have to be as honest as possible. It only will serve you well in the future. Certainly won't hurt you. And especially, now complicated relationships are complicated no matter what. You throw in a pandemic and you get an extraordinarily complicated situation. And so be aware too, this is not sort of standard fare, but during the age of Corona, that there will probably be power struggles. I don't think any of us enjoy any of the hankayot, any of the, wear your mask and social distance and all that. We have to do what we have to do. But if you have, for lack of a better word, a difficult parent, understand that while you're trying to also protect them within Corona, that they may struggle with you on those issues too. And you just have to do your best. And when you need help, I beg of you, bring in help when and where you can.
Okay. So I'm thinking at the end of the day, you know, when there's a person in the family that needs help, somebody will need to pitch in and help. I mean, there isn't really an option. And what are you supposed to do, or how is the family, as a family, supposed to deal with that when there's really bad blood or a conflict? Even regarding, you know, navigating disabilities or bureaucracy, how does that work?
So if this is all taking place in Israel, there are a few things you have to be aware of. You know, Aliyah, right? Let's say a lot of people have their parents come over, or their parents choose, I should say, to make Aliyah because they may need help, or because their pension came through and they've decided now's the right time. Whatever the reason is, understand that, especially for people, not only, but especially for people who have made Aliyah, Aliyah is hard. Aliyah is hard when you're young, when you're healthy, when you're pretty sure you know what you're going to do. The language, even if I used to think I spoke Hebrew and then realized I spoke, some variation of it, but not real Hebrew. The language is an issue. The Aliyah process is an issue. Now put on top of that Corona. Now put on top of that someone who is older and has lived more of their life independently without needing support, or certainly not support going to the pharmacy. They know how to get their medication. They know how to make an appointment. And then also you're in a completely new environment on every level, and you may be more ill. Typically, again, we're talking about people in Gil HaShlishi, right? They're an older generation, so they probably have a few more aches and pains and illnesses. So when you put that into the mix of Aliyah, things get more complicated. But I think that the reality is, whether any of us like it or not, and I speak very much from personal experience, someone's going to have to step up. Somebody will. I had a very complicated relationship with my mom. I am one of two kids, and as the situation was, I was the caregiver. I was 6,000 miles away, but I was the caregiver. And I had to do that, not because I think I, deserve an award, but because somebody had to do it. It was very, very simple. In some ways, not, but in other ways, very simple. So what I needed to do, not only as the caregiver for my mom, for as much as I could do from across the ocean, is I also had to make sure that there was a team. And a team that I could work with. In hospice and nursing homes, we call it the interdisciplinary team. You have the social worker and the nurse's aide and the doctor. It's a whole team of people talking about the same person, and all of that is about the care you're providing. So when I visited the States, and I made sure to have whatever family meeting I could. When I needed mediation, I called on the hospital social worker or the nursing home social worker. And I encourage people to call on, you cannot do everything on your own. You physically and emotionally can't. And when, again, moving this back to Israel, you can bring anyone in that you feel comfortable with to help you navigate. It could be your rabbi. It could be your neighbor. It could be someone that everybody trusts that isn't blood related at all. So you may need a mediator. But you can also, mercifully, there are agencies that can also support and provide that kind of mediation and help you navigate too.
Right, like the Lev Shalem and AACI, right. There's Nefesh B'Nefesh, there's Mayanot. No, you're right, there's a lot of those here.
Right, the Shira Pransky Project. There are lots of places to go for help. It's also vital, with that I should say, to learn about what the available resources are. When I worked in hospice, families would apologize. I don't know how to do this. And I would tell them in so many words that I was glad they didn't know how to do it, because it meant that they hadn't gotten to this point in their life at that time. You don't know how to plan for a parent's declining health until you're preparing for a parent's declining health. And so if you don't know that, there's no age requirement. It's not like, you as the adult child hit 50, you must know what to do. You must know what to do when you have to do it. So, and we all learn it as we go. So it's important to, again, to know about what your available resources are, to speak to other people. There are support services on Facebook. a group called Sandwich Generation Israel. I think I said that right.
Yeah.
And you can network with other people who are in the same boat. You can find out, who do you use for your caregiver? What do you use? An agency? What are the rules? What are the requirements? Network as much as you can, because for any moment you think you're in this on your own, you're absolutely not. You're absolutely not.
Okay. What about, getting used to the medical system? Because there are probably a lot of elder people who can navigate the web, but they find it very difficult, especially in Israel, to navigate the system here, especially setting up appointments in Hebrew. So how do we help them on one hand, but also make sure that they maintain their independence so that they feel good about themselves?
Right. I think here another thing, whether you have a complicated relationship or not, perhaps even more so if you do, is that you have to understand that, or I would hope you understand that your parents clearly are older. They have lived more years depending on themselves than you. That's sort of just the math of it. So when you make Aliyah, again, no matter what age you are, you become very dependent, hopefully for just a short time. You have to rely on people to explain, this is where you go for that. This is the name of this medication in this country. This is how you get to the misrad, the office of this, but it's only open on Tuesdays, but maybe on Thursdays, but maybe the owner's in bidud. There's all sorts of, hoops to jump through. That's hard when you're healthy as a horse. Now, again, add all the other factors of being an elderly person, being physically more frail, let's say, of not necessarily knowing how to make your appointments online. Not to say that seniors are, not literate in computer skills, but the computer systems can be hard for anybody. So if you, as the family member, can't sit down, I certainly would encourage at first to sit down with your family member and say, let's go through this computer screen together. Let's talk about the things that we need to do. If you can't do that, or you are not capable of doing it, then again, bring in a team, bring in support. Somebody will ultimately have to do it. And that may sound very, is what it is, but unfortunately it is. But if you can't do it, get help. Maybe give yourself a limited amount of time. Mom, I'm going to sit with you for about an hour. This should be enough time to get you your vitamins and get you to your orthopedic appointment and all of that, and help them that way with the medical system. The other thing is, it may sound small, but it's not. Is that it's very easy. I know when I'm helping someone, with something on the computer, it's very easy for me to put my hand on the mouse. I'll do it. I'll click away. But that takes away it takes away from their dignity and from their independence. So your finger works fine. You can point at the screen. No, that's the box right over there. Let them click the box. It may sound so silly and so insignificant, but it's a matter of control. And again, when you're thinking of all the things that you lost, right? You did whatever job you did in your home country, and now you're here and you need help with everything. Let them click a button. It can make a difference. It means that they did something active. There was an active role that they played in it. And if it's all you need to do to give them that sense is click a button, let them click a button. It will help both of you.
It probably also empowers them. There's this saying, you can give somebody a fish or you can teach them how to fish.
Right.
Probably the same sort of thing. You can do it for them, but that doesn't really help them for the next time.
Right. Lead them to the water, show them where the fish are, and tell them to cast their. I do not fish. This metaphor is. I can't do this metaphor fully, but you know what I mean. The other thing I do want to say that is really important is that customer service. It gets a lot of, we make a lot of jokes about it, but customer service is different. I know that anyone listening who is from the U.S. probably just, fell off their chair. But that's something that we have to be aware of too. Imagine when I was in the States, I was only there, I left 10 years ago, not even. I picked up a phone to make an appointment with the doctor. Okay, fine. I can come on Tuesday at 1:30. It was done. What do you mean go on the computer and I need to get a confirmation? And like, what is that? Right. So then, hold on, my computer didn't work. So now I have to call a moked, and they said I pressed 1 for English and they gave me Russian, and what do I do? Right. So that happens. I know it happens. But customer service is something that people need to be aware of. And it doesn't necessarily mean it's bad, but it's different. And I want to be really clear, and I feel really, really strongly about this, that there are people who, again, I can only speak for the U.S., who will come to Israel and say, the medical system here is terrible. It's socialized medicine, and it stinks, and you can't get an appointment, on and on and on. And I always compare it to, I can't give you the exact part in the Tanakh, but, when the Jews left Egypt and, they were beaten and they were slaves, and they get out of Egypt and there's no food. Oh, it's so much better in Egypt. I'm not saying America's Egypt. I'm really not going to use any comparisons with America right now. They have their own sorrows, their own problems. But it's really important to understand that there's good and there's bad everywhere. I have had doctors in the U.S. who were phenomenal. I've had doctors in the U.S. who made me wonder why they were allowed to speak to people, because they had the bedside manner of a frog. And I'm being very kind when I say that. I've had medical care in Israel that was beyond. It was amazing. It was compassionate and all the things you want in your doctor. And other people that I, again, wonder why do they let you talk and work with people? You shouldn't be doing this. It's not country specific. It's person specific. So it's important, again, to be aware of that, because it's very easy to say, it stinks here. Find another doctor. I know that's very flip of me to say, but if that's going to help you with the relationship you have with your parents while you're already going through a difficult caregiving situation, it's much smarter, it's much wiser to change what you're going through instead of, spinning your wheels and complaining about how terrible the care is. Unless that's the way you bond with your parents. If that works, that may have benefit too.
Basically, life is not black and white. There's a lot of gray.
Right. And so it's also very easy when you leave what you're comfortable with. It's very hard to find how amazing it was here. It is, right. But then you also realize that, I never thought that maybe I would find somebody even better here. And then you can, that certainly helps when you're dealing, with a complicated relationship, when you're dealing with aliyah, when you're dealing with people who are giving up their independence and have to be more dependent on their children, on their grandchildren. A little bit can go a really long way.
Sure. Okay. So what are some of the takeaways that you would recommend?
So, again, when I started, I said, not everyone, it's really important to be honest with yourself. Not everyone has, a large family that can be supportive. Not everyone has an amazing relationship with their parents. Nobody wants to be in a caregiver position. It is not fun. I did it twice. It's not fun. It is difficult. It's emotionally taxing because, again, with all the issues, Corona and being older and making aliyah and doing all of this in another language, none of us are superwoman or superman, even if we think we are. And when you're providing care for a parent, whether it's providing it through an agency or yourself, you also have to realize that you are still the adult child. That doesn't go away. So if you had a wonderful relationship, and I hope you did, I hope that you did, that's going to carry you through. And if you had a complicated relationship, there's a really good chance that it's going to get more complicated. Just think about when you don't feel well. My family knows that when I'm having an allergy attack, and I have one like clockwork every year, and I complain, and that's just what I do, right? I'm not the nicest person. I can't breathe. I keep coughing. I know it's not COVID. Been tested, right? I'm like grabbing for the allergy medicine. I don't feel well. I'm not nice. Okay. I'm the first to say it. And how much more so when it's a lot more than an allergy attack. So if you're already a difficult person, and as far as my family has not told me that I am on a regular basis.
Okay.
But if somebody is not a nice person on a regular basis and they don't feel well, it's just going to make it that much harder. They're not going to suddenly, just because, God forbid, they have cancer, doesn't mean that they're going to say, oh, I'm dying, I really should treat you better. No, that's generally, could it happen? Yes. Is it generally the way it works? No. So be aware of that. Also, again, if you don't know how to do what you need to do, ask. I'm a social worker. You need resources, I'll get you resources. That's one of the things I do. You need to find out what group, where do I go, who's the right person to contact. That's what social workers are here for. That's what I'm here for. That's what these agencies are for. This is a life lesson, but don't make assumptions. Right? Oh, but look, my mom just made Aliyah and she's sick. Of course she's going to get care from the government. No, of course. You have to ask. You always have to ask. And when it comes to also, if you have the luxury of time, speak to your parents when they're healthy. Find out what's in the bank account. What can you afford? What can you not afford? Do they have healthcare insurance from wherever they've made Aliyah from? If you're afforded that extra time, it will allow you to formulate a realistic plan of care for the future. I can tell you that when when I was growing up, my mom always used to say, and I hated it. She always used to say, in case, God forbid, the sentence was never finished. In case, God forbid, there's a silver metal box in the closet. And I knew exactly what it was. That's where I keep the important papers. And I would always say, Mommy, stop. Please, I can't have this conversation. And she would always say, Rachel, in case, God forbid. And let me tell you, in case, God forbid, happened, and I obviously had to do the legwork, but my mom paid for her own funeral. Everything was set in place before. I was given the luxury of falling apart, because the nitty-gritty stuff, most of it was done. I just had to make sure the papers went into the right place. So I'm very fortunate in that way. Delegate tasks. If you cannot do it, get a friend. I had a friend drive me to the bank. If you can't do the Hebrew, ask someone for help. Please ask for help. And also, to the best of your ability, please take care of yourself. I know it's very trite, it's very cliche. We talk about self-care. It doesn't have to mean bonbons and manicures. If that's your thing, go for it. When I was taking care of my mom, my decision was I came into the States for 3 weeks, and I was going to be in the hospital with her every single day. And I got yelled at internationally, from Canada, from the US, from England, and from Israel. You cannot be in the hospital every day. I came for that. And everyone yelled, and I took myself out to some of my old haunts, spent some time in Walgreens, didn't buy anything. I just walked around, treated myself to lunch. It wasn't anything fancy, but I needed to not be in caregiver, daughter, everything is falling apart mode for a little bit of time, because the quality of your care is only as good as how good you are and the energy you have to give over. You're not going to hear the doctors. You're not going to be able to focus on your parents. You're not going to be able to think. And the last thing, and then I'm just going to give this over to you too, is that this is really hard. No matter what country you're in, it's hard. When I was in the funeral home and we were just about ready to start the service for my mom, I kind of froze. In addition to all the other emotional stuff, I froze because the funeral director gave me a bunch of papers and said, Mrs. Weinstein, you have to sign. And I stopped and I realized I can't do it. I can't do this because my mom, for all of my years, She was the one who paid the bills. She signed things. She had very distinctive handwriting. And all of a sudden, I was signing the papers, right? Again, complicated relationships, distance, so many things. And I was 40 years old. I'd been married for over 2 decades. I have 4 adult children, and one of them was married or almost married at the time. And I realized in that moment that I was the grown-up, and it was very powerful. I did this for a living, but I didn't know until I had to know. So
absolutely. Absolutely. I really understand, these hard conversations. I, as an elder law lawyer, deal a lot with these hard conversations when I come to a family, even, end of life decisions. And they're like, no, 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 no. It's like, you really need to talk about it. And sometimes it's funny because the parents do want to talk about it, but the children don't want to listen. Right, and I sit them down and say, you know what, this is not a fun conversation, but we're all going to be grown-ups, as you said, right, and we're going to have it. Because otherwise, when you won't be able to have it, because God forbid mom and dad have dementia, you'll have to guess, and nobody wants to guess. Right. So let's have the talk. Or, making sure there's a special folder with all the important information, including passwords, including credit card information, including insurance, including, IRA information from people in America. It's important that everybody knows where these are sitting and what the information is, because when God forbid you need it, the last thing you want to start doing is checking the house and finding pieces of paper and trying to figure out a puzzle where, it should be somewhere with together.
I hated that silver box. I can see it in my head, but I'm telling you, everything that she had told me, and it's interesting. I'm sorry to
it was a blessing.
Right. My mom fought. She was, everyone says, mom's a fighter. She did not enjoy, not that most people do, having the conversation about death and dying. But this was her way of saying, I love you. I'm letting you know now. If God forbid, that was and it happened. And obviously I had to do the legwork. But the papers were all there. The work was done. A lot of that was done.
Absolutely. Also, in America, I know preparing a durable power of attorney is something actually very well known and done as part of estate planning. Right. And Israel is set up a little bit different, but there is a durable power of attorney, and it is very, very important for the children and the parents to get their act together and make sure that the parent discusses this topic with the child and signs on such a document, because when they need to use it, if they don't have such a thing, it will be too late. And it will be a matter of a guessing game. What would mom or dad want? How would they want to proceed with this? What is important to them? And it's funny because, and we'll close up the session, but there was one of the documents that I prepared. And every document is so different because every person has things that are important for them. So one person said to me, you know what I really like to do in the evening? I have this thing that I like to sit with, like this little glass of red wine and just breathe. Can I put that in my enduring power of attorney? And I said, of course. Yes. Please put it in.
Right.
Because
absolutely.
People will be more than happy to do that if that's possible. You can drink wine without, if there's no question of medication or whatever. Right. They would love to be able to know that this is your little heaven spot and this is what you want. Of course, so important.
It's a quality of life issue, and a quality of life issue for your parent. And again, I can say this from experience. No matter what the relationship was, when they're comfortable, a part of you exhales. It's you may not have gotten along all the time, but knowing that at this moment, I'm truly doing the best I can do, and the look on your face, or your posture, or your blood pressure, whatever, something is telling me you got it right. And of course, taking care of our parents is not about, well, I got it right, but I have to be honest that when you're worried and you're nervous and you're emotional because it's your parents, you know what? Getting some sort of confirmation that it's good, you're doing a good job. It helps your heart. It really, really helps your heart.
You know, I have this saying that there isn't such a thing. Most children, if not all children, want what's best for their parents, but they don't necessarily know in advance what is the best for their parents. And if their parents tell them, it makes it so much more easier in the long run.
Can I just add one last quick thing? Sorry. That when we would go visit, when I was with my team in the hospice team, and we would visit people in nursing homes, I worked very closely with music therapists, a phenomenal profession. They are not just troubadours. They're not musical, traveling musicians. They're therapists who use their music. And so oftentimes, we'd see someone who was, little old lady or little old man, and they would start playing, they'd sing a little bit of opera or some very classic, very sweet, like, kind of music. And I remember one time, more than once, but there was a family who said, my dad really didn't like that stuff. Do you have like anything like I don't know, like Grateful Dead? Can you like get a tape recorder and like play some heavy metal? Because he really liked that. And so you don't want to raise the person's blood pressure too high, but you could see that when familiar music, right? It was his red wine in his comfortable spot. You saw the change, and it was unbelievable, because if you walked past, you knew that the man was dying, and there was like, an electric guitar, like, what's going on? But he was happy, and that made everybody else happy. So
absolutely.
Yeah. So that's
absolutely.
That. So,
well, this has been an amazing talk. Thank you so much. Your information, by the way, if everybody wants to talk to Rachel and ask her questions or need her help, so her cell phone is on the screen, on the bottom of the screen, and your email is on the bottom of the screen.
Absolutely. I'm available for free consultations. I'm available to meet with you. I have office space, all Ministry of Health requirements, masks, distance. I'll throw in the gel. I can do Zoom. Excuse me. Whatever works. I am available.
Okay. Well, this was amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for listening, and have a good night. And I look forward to seeing you on my next live session. Bye, everybody.
Awesome. Thanks.